So I'm 26 and I'm taking the bus to my mom's house in NDG, where I grew up. Woo! NDG! It's always overcast. It seems like it's always overcast and gray whenever I go home. The ride is really long, and as I get closer to home, I start seeing some familiar sights. Rundown depths, unfinished condo projects that stalled years ago, and street corners where men stand around all day waiting for something to happen. Nothing much has changed in my neighborhood. Most of my childhood was spent on the streets of Summerled and Fielding, but especially Walkley, where my friends lived, and more importantly, where the McDonald's was. I would beg my mom all the time to take me to McDonald's, and she didn't want to, but once in a while she would cave in, and we'd go there on a Saturday for lunch. She would never let me go to Walkley after dark, though, because she said there are guns and gangs and drugs. I never saw that during the day, but every so often we would hear about a police raid, or my friends would tell me about a shooting that happened. As usual, lunch with my mom doesn't go so well. I'm hungover from the night before, and we end up getting into an argument, as you do with your mom quite often. And I decide I'm leaving. And I go before we eat lunch. And when I get out of her apartment building, I realize I'm really still hungry. And at that moment, I think, I'm going to go to McDonald's. So I head down. As I'm heading down Walkley towards the McDonald's, I realize that I haven't been here in a long, long time. There's rows of subsidized housing and apartment buildings that used to be subsidized housing that line the street. I walk past a boarded up building where my friend Stefan used to live. When we were in elementary school, I'd hang out at his place all the time. We'd play with Hot Wheels and eat potato and ketchup sandwiches. It was pretty awesome. Stefan's mom was an orderly who worked overnight at the hospital, and she slept most days, so I rarely saw her. The apartment was a basement apartment. It was very dark. The walls were thin, and there were holes punched in all over the place because his brother Shaquille, who was 17, had a bad temper. The best thing about going over to their house, though, was that they had a boa constrictor whose name was Dan Marino. And Dan Marino lived in this huge dry aquarium, and we would feed him mice, and it was really cool because we were young. Anyway, one day I remember going over to their place, and the aquarium was empty. And I went up to Stefan's mom, and I said, "Where's Dan Marino?" And she said, "In the aquarium." And I'm like, "No, he's not." So we ended up spending the whole day looking for him, and he was never found. As I arrive at the McDonald's, something seems different. It still looks like a McDonald's, but it looks really run down and kind of abandoned. And on the front doors, there's all these posters for community meals and parenting groups. So it's kind of strange. I'm about to leave, but I decide, let me look inside. So I look through the window, and I see a small gymnasium with one basketball hoop, and what can only be described as a giant pit right in the middle, surrounded by a really small little gate which wouldn't protect much. I decide I'm still really hungry, I'm gonna leave. And just as I'm about to go, I faintly hear a Bob Marley song coming from inside. Now, at this time, due to some of my lifestyle choices, I'm listening to a lot of reggae, especially from Jamaica. Cold ground was my bed last night, and rock was my pillow too. The lyrics of Talking Blues pull me in through the doors and into what was once my childhood McDonald's. As soon as I get inside, I'm overwhelmed by a smell of chocolate cake in the air. And the song is mixing with the sounds of children's laughter and shouting coming from a room on the other side of the gym. As I walk towards the room, I start seeing ghosts' images of McDonald's from when I was a kid. It doesn't look like it anymore, but I can still see the counter kind of with the cash registers and the plastic chairs and tables and even the playroom that they had in the back. When I get to the door, it's one of those Dutch doors, so the top is open, and I peek my head in, and I see so many little kids. They must have been no more than 3 years old, running around, being crazy, and the music is coming from a little boombox in the corner. There's a lady sitting on a stool right inside the door, and she sees me, and she looks kind of surprised, and she asks me what I'm doing there. I heard Bob. You like Bob? Yeah, I love Bob. Is this still a McDonald's? No, man, this is the Walkley Center. I was like, oh, what's the Walkley Center? She's like, it's a community center. We take care of the community. Oh. Do you need any help? As the words pass through my lips, I realize this is a sentence I don't use very often. I'm going to take just a one step more. So I start volunteering at the Walkley Center and working there for the next year and a half. I've never worked with kids before. I get zero training. They don't even do a police check on me, which is highly unusual. Most of the time I'm working with the preschoolers who are awesome and the after school programs, and I worked there for about a year and a half. Sometimes though, it's a lot of responsibility having to take care of this many children, and sometimes I doubt myself and I wonder if I'm really qualified for this job. At the center, there's this kid named Brian, and Brian is trouble. He's a small, frenetic 10-year-old boy who just clashes with everybody. None of the staff can handle him, including myself. He clashes with the other kids. He has a hard time concentrating on anything, and he never looks you in the eye for more than a split second. That's why this is good. So one day, I'm playing basketball with some of the kids in the gym. We're trying not to fall in the hole as we play, or lose the basketball in the hole, more importantly, when I hear a commotion coming from the kitchen. Alicia, my coworker, who looks exactly like Octavia Spencer, by the way, walks out of the kitchen, eyes bulging, and says to me, "No way am I dealing with that boy right now." Mm-mm. That is just nasty. It's gotta be Brian. A second later, Brian walks out of the kitchen, and on his face is shock and confusion and blood. His bottom teeth are sticking through his bottom lip. I learned later he had tried to jump over a row of chairs. He had not succeeded. I rush him to the bathroom, put him up on the sink, and put some wet paper towels on his lip. It's at this moment I realized that the bathroom still looks like a McDonald's bathroom. There's the outline of kind of creepy Ronald McDonald on one wall, and Grimace, whatever he is, on the other. And I'm trying to calm him down, and something occurs to me. I'm like, oh, and I tell him, this is such a crazy coincidence, this accident, because when I was young, I was in gym class at school, and we were playing dodgeball, and I fell off the stage, and I landed on my face, and half my lower lip was hanging off. And they took me to the nurse's office, and she took out these huge pair of scissors and just cut it off. And everything was okay, and I was fine. This is not a good story to tell Brian at this moment. He starts screaming hysterically, "Don't cut my lip off!" So I assure him I'm not going to cut his lip off. I calm him down. He's okay. At the same time, Alicia goes down the street to the apartment where Brian lives with his aunt. His aunt doesn't seem very interested in coming to get him or help out, but she gives Alicia his Medicare card. So the three of us go to the Children's Hospital downtown. The doctor says he has to put in stitches. Brian's face awakens with fear. And the next thing we know, he's lying on a bed, and the doctor and nurse are about to start. "Please, let's get out of here. I don't like this." I tell him it's going to be fine. But as soon as the doctor starts and puts the first stitch in, Brian screeches as loud as he can. Alicia says, "Hell no! I am not prepared for this," and looks like she's about to faint. The nurse helps her to sit down. Brian continues screaming. The doctor just stops and looks at me like I'm supposed to do something. "Brian, listen," I tell him. Let's talk about something else. Get your mind off this, okay? We'll change the subject. That usually works." He thinks about it for a minute, and he's like, okay, that's a great idea. Good. All right. "Tell me all the stuff at McDonald's." "What?" "The food. Tell me the food at McDonald's. It's so delicious. I'm loving it. Tell it to me." So I agree. The doctor goes back, continues with the stitches. I can hear Brian groaning and breathing heavily under the work. Meanwhile, I'm just listing all the items on the McDonald's menu. Big Mac, French fries, quarter pounder, chicken McNuggets, Filet-O-Fish, sundaes, apple pies. And every so often, Brian kind of through the thing goes, "That sounds good." Anyway, I run out of items. The doctor's still stitching away. So I just start again. I keep going. It's endless. I'm sweating. Alicia's just almost passed out on the chair next to you. She doesn't want to see anything that's going on. Anyway, the doctor finally finishes. And just as the doctor and nurse are leaving, Brian sits up. And he's got blood over his Superman t-shirt. And he looks up at the ceiling, and he exhales. And he says, "That wasn't so bad." So the next day, back at the center, Brian is back to being Brian. He runs right into the middle of a bunch of girls playing double dutch, gets tangled up in the skipping ropes, and then they kick him and they chase him away. He laughs as he bounces across the gym, knocking a little boy's juice box out of his hand. Alicia just nods her head, shakes her head, and rolls her eyes. So it's June, it's a few months later, and we're having our end-of-year party. I've decided in the meantime that I'm going to go back to school and study social work because I really like what I'm doing. So this is my last day working at the center. The week before, I had been in a vintage clothing store, and I came across an adult-size, fuzzy, plush, beautiful Tigger costume. Okay. So I'm at the party, dressed in this Tigger costume, and I am melting because it's very hot. It's very uncomfortable, but it's a big hit. Some of the after-school kids are coming over, giving me hugs. The tiny preschool kids run up full steam to me, kick me in the shins, run away, as they do. The costume is a big, big hit. I see Brian over by the food table. Being Brian, he's eating nacho cheese dip with his hands, and he's double dipping. Anyway, it's a few hours later. The party's coming to an end, and I have a giant push broom, and I'm walking around the whole place trying to clean up as fast as I can, so I can take this suit off because I've probably lost about 5 pounds. but also because I'll be leaving soon, and I don't like long goodbyes. I noticed that some of the parents are forcing their kids to go up to every staff member and say bye. I get some of the quick fist bumps from the teens. A couple of my after-school kids come and give me a hug. And again, a couple of the preschool kids come up for a last kick in the shins. And it's almost empty, the place. And then I feel a tug at my back. And I turn around and I look down, and it's Brian, who doesn't have parents there to tell him what to do. And he looks up at me, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, "Hey, thank you." And he holds his eye contact for a half a second longer than he usually does. And then he's gone. And I'm alone. And I'm very relieved that I'm wearing the Tigger costume at that moment, because I've never before felt so absolutely exposed, but at the same time, so amazingly indestructible. I'm going to stare at the sun and let the rays shine in my eyes. I'm going to take just a one step more. Thank you.